And welcome back to Liberal Dan Radio, Talk from the Left, that's right. This is your host, Dan Zimmerman, coming at you from New Orleans, Louisiana. To join the conversation, it's 914-803-4131, 914-803-4131, and just ask if you call in. Just leave your area code in the chat so I know who it is calling on my screen. Or else you could always leave comments and questions, etc. in the stream, the chat thread for Liberal Dan Radio on YouTube. I'm not using the chat over in Blog Talk Radio, so just head on over to YouTube and enter that chat if you want to join in the conversations there. And if you're listening after the live broadcast, you can leave your comments, questions, concerns, etc. on the show thread at liberaldan.com, facebook.com/liberaldan, at Liberal Dan Radio on Twitter, or of course leave comments here on YouTube as well. So two big topics to talk about today, of course some little ones as well that I'm sure we'll hit along the way. First, shouts out to Aaron and Jolie, the Mod Squad. Thank y'all, as always. Shouts out to all my patrons, people who have supported me for a while. You can become a Liberal Dan Radio patron as little as $5 a month. Just support the show. You might get early access to bits. I didn't upload these ones today, even though I had ideas yesterday, because I was a bad host. But you know, hey. Wait, I even had this loaded up for. Thank you, Donald. It was weird. I was playing Disney Dreamlight Valley on my Twitch stream yesterday. If twitch.tv/nerdydan.com if you want to join me on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I was playing that, and I was interacting with Donald Duck, and I was like, "Thank you, Donald," and I was like, but I can't do a Donald Duck imitation. I suck at it. So, what's up, P-Dubs? Thank you for joining. So if you want to join me with the gaming, and we talk about other stuff too if you want to in the chat, it's fun. And you could also support me there for free if you have Amazon Prime. What else? So news from last week. Last week I had reported that my mother-in-law's car was stolen from right in front of our house. It ended up recovered. They did find the car. It was in Algiers where I live, a little bit closer to where my kids go to school. They did not find the wheelchair, which sucks, because I don't know what's going to happen with that. I don't know if we have to replace it or not, or if we have to pay anything to the company, because I don't know if it was being purchased or loaned from covered by the insurance. The insurance is terrible. Of course, insurance is terrible all over the place. So that's another topic for another day. But the interesting thing was that they used the jack in the car to replace 3 of the 4 tires with donuts, like car donuts. I guess Kia Souls, have like little tiny donuts. They put 3 of the 4 tires were replaced. So I guess they took the tires and stole them, and I guess they could sell them whatever. But I guess the rims as well. So what happened then was that they looked into the trunk or whatever, and they didn't do it with the 4th tire. Like that Kia's donut was still in the car. So it was 3 other donuts that was on the axles of my mother-in-law's car, and the last tire was still there, and the original donut was still there, which is just very strange. Apparently, car smelled a lot like weed, had some stuff sprayed all over it. Like, I think there was a shampoo that my wife had gotten my mother-in-law that she never took out of the car that got taken. I think they squirted it all over the place. It's going to need some detailing. The steering column's all jacked from where they, hacked the car, and so they could, bypass the key system or what have you. It was found running. Apparently they put 1,000 miles on the vehicle. So they were driving it around a good bit. They didn't, the car never flagged on any crime cameras, because they could do the search, I guess, if the crime cameras, I guess they take note of all of the license plates that pass by. That's Big Brother for you, right? So yeah, they were able to look at the crime cameras and try and see if the license plate hit, and nothing ever hit. But what probably happened is they probably took the license plates off so that it wouldn't hit. So, and then the car was left right in front of a house that had a silver Kia Soul, and they stole that one next. So that was their next victim, was that Kia Soul. So they've been having a field day with these Kia Souls. There was another Kia Soul that was stolen that cops were chasing them in, and it flipped over and like set on fire, and nobody was hurt. But yeah, it's been crazy with these whole Kia Soul things with the TikTok challenge, and we don't even have the car back yet. It's towed somewhere. The insurance company now has to go send the adjuster to where it's towed, wherever it is, and then has to do the adjustment, and then we'll have to obviously do all the repairs. But you know, it's better than it not being. It's better than us not knowing where it is, and at least we know it's in the custody of the towing company or whatever, and we know that Geico can get to it, and etc. So it's not over because we still have to deal with the claim, but at least the claim can start, I guess. Let's see. Yeah, Jolie, if you still have that link, I don't know if you have it from last week or not. It's on last week's page if you want. If you could find it that way as well, if you wanted to, just share P-Dubs' GoFundMe to support a fellow sparkler, fellow show supporter, etc. So, you already got it. I thought that was something else. You already got it, Jolie. You're awesome. Appreciate you as always. What else was I going to talk about? I don't remember. Oh, let's go ahead and play. Let's get Hypocrite of the Week out of the way. We can handle that. That's this one. That's Words of Redneck Wisdom. Let's do Hypocrite of the Week first. There you go, this week's Hypocrite of the Week. Of course, you have DeSantis's rather, I guess, kind of funny line about, I don't know anything about paying hush money to porn stars, or however it is that he worded it. I was surprised it came off so smoothly. It was good delivery from the a-hole. But again, it's just this cult of personality that Trump has, that everybody has to behave and be on their best behavior, and if you dare insult Trump just a little bit, they go crazy and angry, and they get pissed off. But when Trump is like, Ron DeSanctimonious, Meatball Ron, oh, I don't like to talk, I always come up with nicknames for everybody that I'm talking about. I can't call anybody by their real name. That's one of the kicker, because DeSantis never mentioned Trump's name, and Trump Jr. was like, he can't even say my father's name. If you can't say the name Donald Trump, don't talk about Donald Trump. Well, hello, your father can't say anybody. Crooked Hillary, phony Fauci, all the other nicknames I come up with people. Lion Ted, Thirsty Marco, or what was it? Was it Thirsty Marco? I don't know. I know he was thirsty at at the State of the Union rebuttal or what have you. But the thing is again, it's just sheer and utter, as the host of the most Nimbus Yosh with the smooth sounds of the Percy podcast often says, hypocrisy is a conservative prerequisite. So we're used to the hypocrisy, but we're always going to keep calling out the hypocrisy as well. So just a lot of people saying sippy cup Marco. Nice. Yeah, for somebody, it's rich that Donald Trump Jr. would try and, say his name. Well, tell your dad to say the names of the people that he's talking about. Have some decorum on his part, or else don't expect decorum on everybody else's part. It's crazy. Hey, Kimchi. Hey, MJ Daniel. Who else did? Robert, thank you for joining as well. Robert, one of the Liberal and Radio patrons. Thank you very much. So, today's show is a tale of two recalls. I gave a little preview of the show last night on my Twitch stream. I was kind of discussing it, so to make sure that, some people got a little heads up about it. And so the first recall election is one I've talked about already recently, which is the recall attempt to get Mayor LaToya Cantrell removed from office early in her second term. Now, the last election, I think they had 47,000 or so people voted for her because it was just a very low turnout election. It was embarrassingly low with the turnout. So only like 47,000 showed up. Of the 225 to 250,000 voters that we have in the city of New Orleans. Now, that question is there's officially like 250, and you need 20% of the overall amount of registered voters in order for you to be able to successfully recall somebody if the district is greater than a certain number. Smaller districts require higher percentages, but the higher the population, the lower the threshold as a percent wise, and you need to get a recall petition successfully done, so that the governor is then required to call a special election to see whether or not they want to recall the elected official or not. So that was one of the big beefs of the recall petition, folks, is that they thought it was unfair that you had so many people on the rolls that were incorrect in whatever way, shape, or form, because they're hooked in with this other group that is working to try and, quote, clean the voter rolls, because they don't like the fact that they have people who use certain addresses that don't seem intuitive to them, I guess, where they're like, oh, there were 7 people who were registered to vote at a FedEx mailbox. I'm like, okay, what's wrong with that? If there's somebody who wants to maintain that they're residents of the state of Louisiana and therefore vote here, but if they're like a traveling nurse and they're going around doing traveling, or if they work like on a cruise ship or some other area where you want to maintain, again, your residency here, but you don't feel like paying for rent while you're away, you could use a PO box, and it's reasonable to use a PO box. And part of the thing with this advocacy is that they view that anybody with an invalid address automatically means you're not a valid voter. But if you don't have a home, if you're homeless, you don't lose your right to vote. Of course, we played that clip as well, because there was some conservative fighting going on, arguing on that show that I listened to, because some of them were saying that people who are homeless should not be able to vote, and Jeff was saying that they should be able to vote, especially if they're veterans, because there is a homeless veteran problem. So there's a whole bunch of rigmarole about that. But at the end of the day, it turned out initially that they would need 50,000 successfully legitimate signatures to get LaToya Cantrell recalled, or at least have the recall election to see if you're going to recall or not. But there was a deal made between the petitioners and the Secretary of State, and they said, okay, well, we'll adjust, or we'll approximate that the total number of voters in the city is 25,000 less than what it officially is on the rolls. So they didn't remove anybody from the rolls, but they just made up a number out of thin air that says, oh, this is the number we're using, but with no rhyme or reason as to how they came to that number. It was ridiculous, and the mayor was trying to sue over that number because there was like, no, you should need the whole 50,000, not the 45,000. They got 27,000. It didn't matter. Now, they submitted over 60,000 signatures on various pages, and they only had 27,000 and change approved. Now, one of the reasons back in the day that I said that I thought this recall election was going to fail, well, besides the fact that nobody has ever been successfully recalled in the state of Louisiana, ever. Like, it exists. It's possible to do. It's never been done because of the threshold of the percentages that are required to get are high. Now, I actually agree with some of the people where my idea initially, I was like, well, they should do something like, require over 50% of the people who voted in the last election for that office. So if you have a low turnout, you would need less signatures than if you had a high turnout election. The fact that they agree with me is making me rethink my position. I'm like, if they're agreeing with it, what's wrong with it? because they're the the low educated voters that Trump likes, and if they're agreeing with me, I'm automatically suspicious as to why, or what am I missing about this formula that is making it so that they would want to do it too. Because I don't anticipate that we actually agree on something on its merits. There's got to be something that I'm missing that's gonna let's see, non-residents count even if they are not citizens, at least on the census. Yes, Wes, when it comes to like the population as a whole, yes, that's true. But when it comes to determining how many you need in a recount, you only take into consideration the amount of registered voters, active registered voters in the city or in the municipality or the area or the state if it's a statewide recall. So you don't look at non-resident people who are here. You don't get whatchamacallit. Even if you're a citizen and you're not registered, it doesn't count. It doesn't count towards the requirements. But of course, these whiny babies in the No LaToya recall campaign were complaining about that the entire time. It was unfair. We had too many. It was an obstacle we had to overcome. Well, why didn't they work to eliminate the discrepancies first before starting the recall? That might have made a little more sense. Get that number down first and then start the recall. But no, they're not. That's why Donald Trump loves the poorly educated, because some of these people are not the brightest bulbs in the chandelier. So, of those votes, 32,421 ballots were submitted by those mail-outs. What they did was they had one person spending a whole crap ton of money on this recall. That person happens to own or co-own the Walk-On's restaurant that's on Poydras. Walk-On's is famous for being one of the restaurants that closed for Essence Festival. Essence Festival being one of the largest black conventions in the city. And they decided to close for Essence to clean a piping issue. Well, apparently they knew about the piping issue for weeks, from what I've heard. Originally, they announced it on the Thursday before. They said, at 11 a.m., they said, we're closing at 3 because we're having a sewage problem. Their problem was that the sewage was coming out of the men's room and going into the dining room. So they're gross because they allowed people to continue to eat in a dining room when they knew sewage was backing up into the dining room. Their excuse was, oh, we didn't know it was that bad. But that's BS, because they knew it was that bad, because they already said we're going to be closed and we're going to reopen Monday. So how would you know how long you were going to be closed and reopened unless you knew how bad it was and knew what work had to be done? So no, you're full of crap. But you waited. But apparently this problem was happening for weeks, according to somebody that I spoke to from the Times-Picayune, which is the local newspaper. So they knew about it for weeks, and they specifically closed down. Why? For Essence Festival. Why? Because the owner is racist, and all the owners that close their restaurants down for Essence Festival are absolutely racist, because they don't want to deal with black clientele, and it's disgusting. So they're doubly disgusting when it comes to that. And he was the person of all of the campaign, I think, had $1.2 million of spending money that it could use to do whatever it is they needed to do to try and get the recall done. And it turned out that like 1.1 million, at least, if not all of it, was money that was donated by this one guy, this one owner. Who is this one owner? Well, he originally he supported Donald Trump. He supported other conservatives. He did make contributions to LaToya Cantrell's campaign, I'm guessing because he does business in the city and wants to grease the wheels, so to speak, and of the person who is the elected mayor. Thing is that the mayor didn't like his plan on dealing with homelessness in the city, because, as a business person, one of his concerns is, I guess, making the city look nicer. And how can the city look nice if there are all these homeless people in there or whatever? All rich, mighty folks, looking down on the peons. How dare they, want to stay somewhere? His solution to the homelessness problem in the city of New Orleans was to go under the bridge where they sleep and to confiscate all their stuff. So not only will they be homeless, they'll be possessionless as well. That was his solution. That solution was rejected on the part of the mayor of New Orleans, which is good. It's good. One of the good things she's done. Another good thing she did is she was a responsible leader during the pandemic when everyone was shut down. She was very strict. She was following the laws. She was not fighting, closures like stupid idiots like DeSantis and Abbott and all those other conservatives who were fighting to, we're going to keep this open, whatever, blah, blah, blah. No, she protected the citizens, and that's part of the reason why the people outside of New Orleans were supporting the efforts with, I guess, manpower, is because they were mad that LaToya Cantrell, or as some people call her, Titi, was, keeping everything shut down for the pandemic and protecting the citizens of the city of New Orleans. So they were mad at that, and I wasn't about to help an organization backed by such people, even if I thought she wasn't the greatest, which there's things I disagree with. I don't know who would replace her. I don't know who would want to replace her. And not anybody who ran against her. That's for damn sure. So here's the thing. So they took of that $1.2 million donated by the guy who owns Walk-Ons. They did a massive mailer effort where they said, okay, here is your petition for everybody in your household. We've pre-filled in all the information, so all you have to do is sign and send it back. I guess have it witnessed as well. So easy, right? I mean, that's maybe somebody sent it to 130,000 chronic voters in the city of New Orleans. Now, me and my wife count as one, so they didn't send us 2 ballots. They just sent us 1 petition with both of our names on it. So apparently they have in the software the ability to sort by name or whatever software was being used. But when I looked at my petition that I received in the mail, it had the incorrect birth year on there. So I'm like, well, I can't possibly be the only one this has happened for. I would be shocked because I know the Secretary of State has my correct birth year because I was able to check my voting information online using that information, which included my birth year. But they put an incorrect birth year. So to me, that says that there is either a clerical error when entering the information, or there is a bug that was putting wrong information in certain places. Either way, I was going to be surprised if I would have been the only one, and I predicted that even though that nobody's ever successfully recalled a politician in the state of Louisiana before, as I said, I didn't think that this one had a good chance of succeeding simply because of the fact that there would be too many of these ballots with errors on them that they did themselves. It was unfortunate they never checked it to verify if the information was correct. They just mailed it out and just hoped that they would come back correctly. And they didn't. Of those ballots that were returned, of the 32,421 ballots that were submitted in that way, 32,397 were rejected for reasons listed as, quote, other. So that's over 99% of these things were faulty. They had problems with them. Now, I don't know if it was all the same, a different birth year problem, if there was some other issue, or maybe there was some other technical issue. They didn't have the date right. They didn't sign it right. Whatever. 99% of these things failed. Now, I predicted that this would be a source of problems for the recall campaign. I had no clue. I would have never expected it to fail that badly. I didn't think that 99% of them would be yeeted simply because they couldn't get the information right. So yeah, that's why they failed. Not because the system is rigged against them. It's because they couldn't be bothered. They would have been better to just mail out blank ballots to people. They might have had a better rejection rate when it came to that. But there are also other issues with the ballots that were submitted. The non-others that were included were like, they had duplicate papers. Like there was they sent in a scan, not the original. You have to have the original document, not a copy of the document. So if they submitted a scan of the document, then guess what? That doesn't count. If it's a photocopy, it doesn't count. They had people who were signing the petition that didn't live in New Orleans. They lived in Metairie, they lived in the North Shore, they lived in other places. I guess they were hoping that they would just sneak on by and not get caught, but they didn't count. So of the 60,000 that were submitted, like 27,000 were allowed, which was less than what was needed for it to be successfully done. So that is the tale of this one. Wait, what's going on? As I see something about a troll. Let's see. Ron DeSantis. I love that people are starting to call him Rhonda Santis. That's his drag name. Crap ton. I love when Dan speaks in technical terms. LOL. Yes. A metric crap ton even. I made some liquor that helps your eyesight twice as good. You can see 2 of everything. Nice. Food draws rap. People always have food. I don't know what that's about. Either way, Republicans are just trying to protect those very important things. Of course, those very important things to Republicans are usually not important to anybody else. Take care of those fish, Deminox. What troll? I'm not seeing what the troll is. Yeah, Inkrat West isn't a troll. So, hey, Aquatic, how's it going? Why is Hunter suing that pawn shop owner? Is Hunter suing somebody? I haven't seen that yet. Let's see. Hunter Biden sues pawn shop. Is that a pawn shop owner? Hunter Biden sues owner who worked on laptop. So it's a computer repair shop owner. So let's pop this open. Well, let's see. Biden said, this is on Bloomberg, Biden said content of laptop was shared without permission. Lawsuit filed after store owner sued younger Biden, Schiff. Hunter Biden is suing the owner of a computer repair shop where he allegedly dropped off his infamous laptop, claiming the man improperly copied and helped disseminate his personal data. The suit filed in Friday in U.S. Court of Delaware as a response to defamation acted by the shop owner, John Paul Mac Isaac. Is he at the Beatles? Has anybody else made that joke before? I'm sure they have. Hello, Inkrat. Thank you for joining us. I welcome you. Why is this not showing the rest of the article? It's not loading. Let's see if I can find another. What's the CNN one to say? Hunter Biden is accusing Delaware computer repair shop owner who worked on a laptop of trying to invade his privacy and wrongfully sharing his personal data for political purposes. Biden's lawyers also say that John Paul Mac Isaac, George and Ringo, opposed the presidential candidate of Hunter's father, Joe Biden, and then he gave Hunter Biden's data to political enemies to help then President Trump in 2020. Mac Isaac intended and knew, or clearly should have known, that people to whom he provided the data that he believed to belong to Biden would be then used against then candidate Joe Biden, to help against Trump. Hunter Biden's lawyers wrote in the court filing Friday. The filing from Hunter Biden's lawyers outlined several ways Mac Isaac provided data to others, including when they say Mac Isaac sent a hard drive inside a stuffed animal to his father in New Mexico to a lawyer who worked with Trump's attorney Rudy Giuliani. The unauthorized accessing and dissemination of Mr. Biden's data is offensive and objectionable to Mr. Biden. So it's not. Are they not saying that he actually still brought a laptop in, which upholds the idea of there was no laptop. Let's see. In court filing Friday, Hunter Biden's lawyer acknowledged that some of his electronic data was in Mac Isaac's possession, but he didn't admit the laptop was his, nor does he specify which records that were shared are his. Hunter Biden hasn't publicly claimed ownership of the laptop. He said in a 2021 interview that it could be his, or it could have been hacked, or a Russian fabrication. I mean, the idea that he would go to that he would cross the country just to drop off the laptop to the one computer store owner or repair shop owner that couldn't identify who he was, it doesn't pass the smell test. So that's kind of silly for me. So I still don't believe that. So what I believe that Hunter is doing is saying, yes, some of this is my data. I didn't, but he's not saying that he gave him the computer. He is just saying that his data was taken wherever this computer repair shop, Mac Isaac, got the information from, he then disseminated it to other people, and that harmed Hunter Biden, and as such, that's the cause for his lawsuit. So there you go. Crazy ridiculousness. So let's see. Wes does get whacked every now and then. Wes, I have a troll who thinks that she is a liberal writer, whatever. Wes, calm down. Anyway, so that was a good half hour of the show. We're not going to take a break. We're just going to keep on powering right through. Hey, Alarasia, how's it going? Thank you for joining us. Appreciate you for coming around. There are 17 likes and 14 viewers, so hey, that's a good thing. Although there's 30 views and 17 likes, so if you haven't liked yet, like it. Like the video. Share it with your friends too. Boop, 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 boop. Anyway, next topic of conversation is the other recall. So, what's the deal with the other recall? Well, if you remember the Brock Turner case, in the Brock Turner case, the People versus Turner, a jury convicted, and I'm getting this from the this part is in the website recallreframe.com about the film. In People versus Turner, a jury convicted Stanford swimming star Brock Turner of sexual assault and attempted rape of an unconscious woman, Chanel Miller, on the university campus. Judge, was it Aaron Persky? Let's see. Is that the correct name? Aaron Persky, yes. Was the person that sentenced him, and he sentenced Brock Turner to 6 months in jail, 3 years probation, and a lifetime on the sex offender registry, and he got out in 3 months. And of course, there was massive outrage over what happened, because 6 months for this blatant, heinous attempted rape, for the sexual assault, is clearly too little to anybody who was looking at the case and how horrible the case was. So this caused the people of California to attempt a recall. They put out the petitions or whatever. As this from NPR, Judge Aaron Persky, who handed down the sentence of a high-profile sexual assault trial of Stanford student Brock Turner, was recalled by voters on California on Tuesday. So it was the first time in 87 years that California recalled a judge from a bench. The voters removed him. They got the required signatures, and they went ahead and got the required votes, and they removed him from office. Again, I don't know how many people would say, oh yeah, 6 months is enough. Although I'm sitting there and I'm watching the Recall Reframed mini documentary or documentary short about what was going on, and there are people on there who were saying things like, well, the judge had his discretion and that sentence was within the guidelines that are allowed a judge, so he didn't violate the law. He was empowered by the state of California to hand out such a sentence, and there was some apologia of the sentencing that I found to be disconcerting and uncomfortable, because I'm like, are you really defending this judge? How can you defend the judge? How can you defend this sentencing? This guy is an example of somebody who clearly needs to be punished, because it's one of the rare cases where you have witnesses to the rape or witnesses to the sexual assault. So they saw it happening. We all know it happened. And yet, he got such a slap on the wrist. And there you have these legal experts who are like, oh, well, it was a fair ruling. And I'm like, not a fair ruling, but a fair sentencing. And I'm just like, how? But instead of reacting immediately, in my video series that I have on the channel, I have 3 videos on it so far, coming to terms with activism. And there's more on the way eventually, I promise, at some point. Part of that video series is the idea that if you hear something that is counterintuitive to your worldview, to your experiences, if something doesn't sound right to you, instead of just immediately lashing out and immediately pounding on the keyboard and harble garble and I don't, this is ridiculous and I don't understand it, take a step back, you relax, you let it marinate. You think about it from other points of view. You maybe try and do a little bit more research to try and find out what it is that about this term that you are having a problem with. Are you putting the wrong term on it, maybe? Or are you getting this idea wrong? Do you understand it correctly? Take that time to really understand what's being spoken about. You don't have to agree at the end of the day, but allowed me to using my own advice allowed me to take a step back and try and at least have an open mind to the idea of what these people are trying to say and what this documentary is trying to say. What's up, Andrea? Thank you for joining us. Appreciate you. And what the documentary was pointing out, or one of the things that the documentary pointed out, is that we have an incarceration problem in this country. We are the most incarcerated country in the world. I think Louisiana, where this Brock Turner wasn't, but Louisiana is the king of kings when it comes to incarcerating people. We love to incarcerate people. It's just our national pastime. So what happened in California during the recall and beyond, or what are the people who created this documentary trying to say about what happened in the wake of the attempts of successfully recalling this judge? Well, immediately, according to the documentary, there was a 30% increase in sentencing across the state. So whatever a sentence might have been over the past year, or whatever metric they used to determine this, whatever metric they used, they determined that sentencing went up 30% across California in the 6 weeks following the recall. So what they're trying to say is that all of the judges are elected in the state of California. And when the voters stood up and said, hey, we don't want none of this weak sentencing crap, the judges were afraid for their jobs, supposedly. That's the argument that the documentary is making. And it's saying that, well, if you are getting sentencing that's increasing by 30% across the board, then the unintended consequence of pushing for a recall and successfully recalling Judge Persky was more disenfranchisement of people being sent to jail, since black people nationwide tend to be incarcerated for much longer sentences disproportionately than their white counterparts committing the same crimes. Then if sentencing is going up 30% across California, that means that black people are getting 30% higher sentencing rates, or that are of their already elevated rates. So they're seeing even more of a disproportionate amount of the increased sentencing. So, let's see. The director of the film, according to the San Francisco Standard, acknowledged the profound cognitive dissonance that can occur for people who supported the recall and who are also against mass incarceration, which are typically both progressive positions, the article says. People who supported the recall are now finding our assumptions challenged. We have had hard and important conversations, Cohen said, acknowledging the other side. Michelle Dauber is a Stanford law professor, spearheaded the recall, had a different perspective. She goes, as for any supposed negative consequences of the recall, in my view, there is no credible evidence that the recall election produced longer sentences. That's because, contrary to the arguments of the recall critics, most judges are trying to follow the law and act with integrity rather than following election results. But still, she's not giving necessarily any data to prove that argument that there was that the sentencing was consistent, while these people who created this documentary are showing data, at least I don't know the exact hard data of it, but they're presenting data that says 30% increase in sentencing in the 6 weeks after the recall. Stanford law professor also stated the Persky recall was more about justice securing a longer sentence for Turner. It's about making a strong statement against rape culture in the legal system. So let's see. Cohen didn't provide answers in the film, but she wants to raise the question of what justice can look like beyond harsher prison sentences. So that's kind of the question you have here: is there a contradiction in you wanting harsher sentencing for rape while opposing mass incarceration? I don't necessarily think there is, but I think that's what the people who created the documentary, and I highly recommend everybody watch it. Here is, if you have MSNBC, it's probably available on demand. Let's copy it and paste it into the chat. Thank you, Benny Loco. Dab. So there's the link to the website of the documentary, The Recall Reframed. I guess there's links where you can watch it. It's streaming on NBC Peacock. It's available for educational screenings via Kaga Releasing. Broadcast on NBC starting March 19th. And there's also screenings of it coming up. So if you have Peacock, you can watch it. So, but yeah, it brings up questions as to is there a contradiction in wanting harsher sentences for certain crimes while opposing mass incarceration? These people are suggesting that there very well might be. After taking the time to think about it, I'm not convinced that there is a hypocrisy there. There is a contradiction there. I think you can be overall for less incarceration while supporting harsh sentences for certain crimes. And I mean, the racial disparities in sentencing exist and will exist regardless of what happened in the recall. Now, some people might think that in those 6 weeks prior after the recall, you had a situation where maybe people were getting sentences harshly across the board. But even if none of that ever happened, if Brock Turner had been a black guy, we all know that he was definitely highly likely to have received a much harsher sentence than simply 6 months in prison and probation for 3 years. We all know it would have been a much bigger sentence, a much longer sentence than what Brock Turner got. So, a simple D&D. What's D&D? Playing doesn't know. You should not get any prison for Dungeons and Dragons. I don't know what you were saying. Hey Megan, how's it going? Good to see you. Megan was part of the Twitch stream last night, where I gave a little bit of the preview of what was going on. So that's one of the questions, and I would love to see in the chat of what you feel about it. Do you feel that if you oppose mass incarceration and want to reduce mass incarceration, can you do so in concert with wanting harsher punishment for certain crimes? I think you can. Some people might disagree. It may very well be possible that in a short term, I don't know if this was in the long term, because the documentary was basically saying that the 6 months after, or the 6 weeks after the recall, you saw higher sentencing. But was that just a blip? Did it go back to normal after the shock of those 6 weeks? Was there anything else about those 6 weeks, about the crimes in those 6 weeks that happened to be different that might account for the sentencing disparities. Because 6 weeks, I don't know if that's a very large sample space comparatively for the trends of years before and years after. Drunken disorderly conduct. Okay, yes. Drunken disorderly conduct should probably not involve prison. And then we can have a whole show about what crimes should have prison time, what crimes should not have prison time, what shouldn't even be crimes. Like, smoking a personal amount of marijuana shouldn't be a crime. But, in some areas it is. So, let's see. So there's a picture on the MSNBC article with Aaron Persky holding a sign that says "Reject the recall of Judge Aaron Persky. Don't recall a respected judge who followed the law." Again, he may very well have followed the law, but he probably would have also followed the law if he would have given him 3 years or 5 years in prison. That was probably within the law as well. So the fact that you follow the law doesn't mean that what your actions were ethical or in any way good when it comes to justice in this country. Benny Loco, I had to book my own brother for D&D. So embarrassing. Oof. Let's see. Agolf Twitler. Sounds like the documentary disbelieves in moderates. Well, that's the other thing. That's the other thing that I was actually gonna bring up is that the documentary kind of is a black and white type of thing. It's either you want harsher punishment for this, so therefore you support harsher punishment, or you support what happened in his sentencing because you believe in ending mass incarceration. And I guess one thing that I would say is that whatever justice looked like for Brock Turner, justice did not include, in my opinion, a simple 6-month sentence. But whatever justice should have looked like, that should be irrelevant to any other case. Whatever the case is, should be judged on its own merits. Like, we shouldn't say, we shouldn't be like, okay, well, we're going to increase the punishment for rape, or we're going to increase the minimum guidelines when it comes to rape sentences. Doing that shouldn't have any impact on any other crime. That's why I think it's different. That's why I think you can absolutely push for an end of mass incarceration while still supporting some incarceration for people like rapists, like Brock Turner. Let's see. Hey, Sehag, long time no see. How are you? Andrea, hope your arm's feeling any better with medication or whatever, hopefully. Yes, our healthcare system does need an overhaul big time. Ken QB, a quote by the judge. Persky said he considered the factors noted by the probation office and the severe impact of imprisonment on the defendant's life. And see, that's part of the problem that I had with his sentence. I mean, sure, he listened to the probation officer, but what guided the probation officer's guidelines? Like, what caused the probation officer to say, oh, this amount of sentence is okay for this crime? But hey, Elizabeth. But the other thing is that the effect on the defendant's life, that's none of our concern. Brock Turner should have been worried about his own life and his own future before deciding to violate somebody's autonomy, before deciding to push himself on a passed out drunk person. He fucked around and he should have found out, but the judge apparently didn't want him finding out enough. That's the thing, is that there are many examples of crime where it's rooted in a systemic problem that's based on something else, like maybe theft. Simple theft of food is because of poverty. So you maybe solve the problem where people are stealing food by making sure that everybody has food available, and maybe you don't lock people up for trying to feed themselves. Maybe you create better systems to feed themselves. where you don't necessarily need a any sort of harsh prison sentence to make people afraid to, grab a can of beans for their family so they can eat for the night or what have you. But when it comes to rape, the fact that you have to tell somebody that they shouldn't be raping anybody is a problem. In and of itself, that already makes that person a sociopath. That they need to be told and they need to be threatened with long prison sentences before they say, oh, well, maybe I won't rape then. The default is don't rape. Period. End of story. That's it. Respect the autonomy of other people. It's very easy to respect the body autonomy of other people. And you can do it while yourself are drunk. I know. I think I've told the story before, but I know. I was 6 hand grenades in, and that's enough to be fit-chased. And I knew that the person who I was hanging out with was way too drunk to be consenting to anything. So I made sure she got home. Back in college. This is in the 90s, when we didn't have as many, I think, conversations about consent and body autonomy. Back then, we were still no means no instead of yes means yes. So if you should have the default of, I'm not going to violate this person's autonomy. So clearly, there are some people who are probably going to not rape if they are afraid that rape will end up in a harsh prison sentence. Now, those people are sociopaths, but if that's what we need to prevent some people from raping, then we need to do it. And that shouldn't be something that raises our concerns when it comes to the harsh sentences of other crimes, or, we should always be concerned about making sure that, we have all of our I's dotted, our T's crossed, make sure that we have, a case that can convict. But if you have the information to convict, and it is hard to convict on rape a lot of the times, because a lot of the times you don't have 2 witnesses looking at you taking advantage of a drunk person by a dumpster. But this is not one of those cases. This is not a he said, she said. This is they all said, and he did it, and he's a rapist and should have been punished for a lot more. Robert Reynolds, what was that term you used? What, fit-chased? Was it fit-chased instead of saying the other one to not have it be a curse? Is that the one you heard? See, Elizabeth, friends don't let friends drink and drive. Honor is ordered with another date. So I heard Stephanie Rule talking about someone comparing the orange creepsicles imminent indictment to Christ on the cross and I may hurl. Yeah, that's always interesting. Okay, good. I was right. You were worrying about fit-chased. So, and that's one of the things in discussing rape or whatever, is that there are people, there's the general argument where people get mad, tell men not to rape. If you're worried about men raping people, don't tell people how to not get raped. Tell men to not rape. And people are like, whoa, nobody needs to be told not. Well, yes, they do. I mean, the people who have it out there and say like, yes, I'm going to go rape. Those people need the harsh sentences or whatever. Those people are the ones who are actively doing, those are absolute sociopaths. Now, the other sociopaths are the people who may really not realize that certain activities are rape because of how they're raised, if they're raised wrong. There are people, I've had arguments on my personal Facebook page over hookup culture, and it's perfectly okay to get people drunk or to just keep both people just imbibing drinks. What's wrong with giving somebody another drink just so they can, be a little more easy or grease the wheels or whatever? And my point is, no, that's stupid. If you need to provide somebody another shot of alcohol to increase your chances of having sex, then you shouldn't be having sex with that person. And that should automatically trigger, if sex does happen and you're plying this person with alcohol to try to get it to happen, it's not sex, it's rape. But there are people who I think need to understand that some of the things that they feel are okay and don't think are wrong because a sociopath doesn't think that what they're doing is wrong. Those sociopaths. The other sociopaths don't care that it's wrong and they're just going to do it. But the other set of sociopaths are the ones that don't think that what they're doing is immoral, a violation of anybody's body autonomy. They feel that if they get a yes via 6 shots of alcohol in a short period of time, that they feel that that's okay. And it's not. Absolutely not okay at all. But clearly, that even isn't even where Brock Turner was. Brock Turner was... I don't even think he provided her the alcohol, if I'm remembering correctly. He just found this drunk girl and said, oh, I'm going to go ahead and do this. And fortunately, there were people who could stop it from happening, and he should have been punished more. Let's see. Tim Farrell, I have 2 sisters and mother, never to be told not to rape. I mean... There are people with sisters and mothers who rape. So I don't think that having a sister and mother is anything. I think I was raised properly to understand things like consent. I'm trying to teach my boys to consent the bodily autonomy of other people, including their brothers, including themselves. Like I've told them that they don't need to hug anybody if they don't want to hug. It doesn't matter if they're a family member. If they don't want to hug, they're free to not hug. Trying to teach them, how important it is for them to be able to, if they don't want to be touched, if they don't want to be whatever, leave the other person alone. Let them doing it. Okay, feel better, Andrea. Thank you. Sex offenders need to be brought to the back 40 and dealt with accordingly. I mean, I would like that. Let's see, Kim, much of this comes from teaching that women are subservient and must obey. Iron Age superstition still rules us. Absolutely. That's part of the patriarchy. It's one of the things that, I need to make a video about, because I'll say patriarchy and a lot of people are like, there's no patriarchy, blah, 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 blah. But yeah, we live in a male-led society. We live in a society where men are the default breadwinners, where women are the default child rearers, and that needs to change. Now, it's changing in some areas, but it's not changing in every area. It's not changing fast enough. So, but yeah, we still have a lot of people who believe that, it's the manly man thing to do, to go get drunk, get laid, and in reality, it's not. Because if you're getting, I don't care if you're getting drunk and getting laid. People should respect your bodily autonomy as well. But if you need to go ply alcohol on other people, that's not consent. That's not okay. Say how it takes 2 to tango. How you carry yourself goes a long way, no matter what gender you are. It does take 2 to... Yeah, it takes 2 to tango, but it's not a tango if one of them isn't consenting to it. It's assault. A tango where only one person wants to tango is assault. It's as simple as that. Bet you don't hear too many women saying there's no patriarchy. There are some that do. They're your Ann Coulter, Candace Owens, other types of folks who are just deplorable in and of themselves. But yeah, there are plenty of women who are conservatives who are like, oh, we don't live in a patriarchy, or that they like that we live in a patriarchy because they embrace antiquated gender roles. So Laura Ingram. Yes, Laura Ingram. A lot of them won't say, I love the patriarchy. They'll just say, we don't live in a patriarchy, and then embrace what we have, which is in and of itself a patriarchy. Of course, if somebody was like, we don't live in a patriarchy, and they're conservative, the first thing to do is obviously ask them what a patriarchy is. Just like you ask them, well, woke. That's woke. We need to fight woke culture. What's woke mean to you? Let us know what you think, because I did that to Home Dude a few weeks back, and Home Dude hung up before he had to answer. So, and that one video again that we talked about last week that went viral of the woman being asked, hey, what's being woke? What does that mean? It's like, well, I can't do it in 15 seconds. You can have all the time you want. Tell us what woke is. And the person at least had enough sense to understand that this is going to be something that went viral, because she got drawn into a corner and whatever. Just like the guy calling in, who was saying, Gibson Media, who was saying that all of these things that he was falsely calling rape culture, not rape culture, CRT. He was falsely calling CRT. These are the things that are happening in CRT in our schools. Well, it's not CRT, but can you give us an example? Give us an example of where anything, and he couldn't give me one. Why? Because it's not happening. Because they've made a boogeyman. They make a boogeyman out of everything. And half the time it's a confession of their own actions. Wes, you say girls need to be warned not to trust anybody around their drinks. My mother, when I was going off to college, told me to never trust my drink around anybody. Never leave your drink alone. Never, she gave me the advice, because you could get taken advantage of a guy. If they drug you, they could take advantage of you, rob you, whatever else they wanted to do to you. So, I think, and I disagree with some people who say that advice perpetuates rape culture. If you're A, giving it to everybody and not just giving it to women, and B, you're not bringing it up after the fact. Like, don't tell somebody who's saying I was raped, well, did you watch your drink? No, that's victim blaming. But if you're going to tell them, look, always bring your drink with you. Make sure to, use the fingernail polish that they created that'll change colors depending on what drug might be in your drink. Giving them tools to avoid being raped is fine, as long as you're giving everybody the same tools. But the focus needs to be on making sure that people understand consent. The focus needs to be on making sure that people understand the need to respect body autonomy and what is rape, what isn't rape, and then, if the people still can't follow that, you then have to give them punishment. And to me, the punishment should be strong and it should be a preventive thing. It should be a deterrent, is the word I was looking for. The longer sentences in rape cases should be deterrents to prevent people who would otherwise rape from doing so, because they're afraid that they don't want to be locked up for that long. So yeah, if I get plastered and drive a car, I'm not the victim of the criminal. That just goes to show that if you can still commit a crime while drunk. You don't have to be sober to commit crimes. Like in the situation that I was bringing up, where I was back in college and I had 6 hand grenades, and the woman I was with had 6 hand grenades. Well, she tried. She didn't finish them. But I was drunk. I was plastered. She was drunker. She was much more drunk than I was. She was much more intoxicated because I was bigger than she was and I could handle my liquor better. But that didn't give me the excuse to, well, I'm drunk, so I'm not responsible for my actions. No, I still knew that this person that I was hanging out with was too drunk to consent to anything, and as such, I had the responsibility to not do anything with her. And it doesn't matter how drunk she was. It doesn't matter that she chose to get that drunk. It doesn't matter what situation she put herself in. At the end of the day, it was my responsibility to respect her body autonomy and to make sure that she got home safely without being molested. Even though I was 99.7% certain that she would have been fine with us having sex. And we did at a later point when we were both sober. So I was right, but even with that percentage, it's not worth the gamble because I didn't know for certain. There was no Jimmy Buffett rule. There was no thing of us saying, why don't we get drunk and screw? Because if you're with somebody or whatever, and both of you are like, yeah, we're gonna get drunk, we're gonna get shit faced, and then we're gonna have a whole bunch of naked fun. Okay, I have no problem with that as long as you both went into it ahead of time knowing that this is what you're gonna do. But if you don't know that, there's no reason to take any actions, because you should know whether or not the person is consenting, and if they're too drunk to consent to anything else, they're too drunk to consent for sex. If they're too drunk to drive a car, they're too drunk to consent to sex. what I would say to some people is like, would you sign if you're a dude and you're trying to hook up with somebody, would you sign a business agreement, a business arrangement, a contract with this person at their current level of intoxication? Because if you got somebody drunk, they're not going to sign the contract that for me to buy their business for some cheap amount of money. Let me apply a couple more drinks into them so they'll agree to sell me their business on the cheap. Well, that would never hold up in court, because once they found out that you were applying them alcohol, that person signed the contract while intoxicated, that sale would completely be rescinded, and you'd have to go back to the drawing board, and you probably wouldn't get the business anymore because you would proven yourself to be a dickhole. But yeah, if you wouldn't sign a business contract with a person, don't have sex with them. It's as simple as that. Wes, you can back out anytime. Absolutely. You can absolutely withdraw consent at any time. And Kimchi, you said no means no. I go further. I say yes means yes, because it's not the absence of a no that should allow you to go ahead and do it, because that woman that Brock Turner raped, or sexually assaulted, I guess, she didn't say no. She didn't say anything. She was passed out drunk. So only a consented to yes, a sober yes, is the only thing that counts. A sober yes by somebody who is legally able to consent is the only thing that counts. That's why I think the burden, it should be yes means yes and not no means no. And yes, either party may back out of sex at any time. It's not just, not just a guy thing. It's not just a girl thing. It's not a non-binary thing. It's whoever is involved in the sex act at the time, be it two people, 3 people, 10 people. If anybody feels at any point of, hey, I don't want to do this anymore, they have the right to do so. Because consent to sex doesn't mean consent to sex in perpetuity, and even consenting to something, you can change your mind in the middle or right beforehand. It doesn't matter. So, Kimchi, I did tell the manager he let me sit at the bar and drink the rest of the night. He did my tables and tips, and then a new rule about where we can leave a drink. I missed half of that. I had it done before and eventually realized what was happening. I can't imagine what would happen if I hadn't. When I was waiting tables, I left my drink at a waitress station. Someone slipped me some acid while night. Wow, that's crazy. Say hi. So at what point are you too intoxicated to not accept sex? 1 drinks, 2 drinks, 4 drinks. But look, alcohol is poison and drugs are bad. Okay. At what point are you too intoxicated to not accept sex? Well, that's ultimately the call. It's not. See, my thing is, it's not my job to, I guess, I could. Well, first of all, let's say this. Anybody, like my wife, she knows that she has blanket consent. If I'm drunk, and she wants to fool around, that's fine. We have what I would think is a permanent Jimmy Buffett agreement. That never changes. It's fine. But I'm fairly certain that, she knows that if I'm drunk, it doesn't matter how drunk I am, as long as I'm physically capable of doing something, I would be happy to do it. If that's not TMI, I don't know. If there should be if that should be part of the subject of the Liberal Dan After Dark conversation or what have you. P-dubs, when you're over your legal limit, it depends on your weight, right? It depends. It depends on your blood alcohol content. I think it more depends on your metabolism of the alcohol. Yes, Kimchi, my wife is very cool. I married up. Totally been drugged at a party. Somebody bit a hole in my jeans. Bad things happen. No bueno. Bit a hole in your jeans? Was this a zombie party? Jesus. Let's see. I have a cat coming to visit me. Hey, TV2, what's going on? But to get back to Seha's question about whether or not you're too drunk or too sober, you have to make a judgment call about your partner or partners. If I have a story of friends of mine who they were on a date. They were eating food and drinking drinks at one of their houses. Things looked like they were going to happen, but my very close friend looked at the other person and said, "Look, I think you're too drunk right now. Let's just sit and talk for a while, and if after an hour and after you sober up a little more, if you still feel like doing it, then we can go ahead and do it." And so they sat there, they talked for another hour, drank some water, they didn't drink any more alcohol, they sobered up, and they got down. And the funny thing is, I got told this story twice because I was talking to my friend about it first, and then I happened to meet the other person later, and not knowing that this other person was the person she was talking about, and I'm like, "Was this person's name so and so?" And they're like, "How did you freaking know that?" She just told me the same story earlier today. It was hilarious. So boom, 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 boom. Yeah, bitter hole of jeans. That's crazy. Um, but it was, you know, it's your responsibility as somebody who wants to have sex with somebody else to make sure that you are getting a sober yes, a sober enough yes. I would guess it's your responsibility. You have to make the judgment call as to whether or not this person that you're with legitimately wants to have sex with you because they want to have sex with you, or is only having sex with you because they're drunk. I can't say that there's a one drink yes, two drinks no. I mean, I'm pretty lucid up, depending on what the drink is, up to three, probably. I mean, I was drinking a lot on the cruise ship, and I was never that intoxicated where I probably wouldn't have been able to consent. But again, if it's not my job to make sure that the other people follow my body autonomy, I guess I should say, is that the right way to put it? It's their job to make sure that my bodily autonomy is respected, and it's my job to make sure that their bodily autonomy is respected. So yeah, I'm in agreement. I'm not a victim blamer. I just think that situations like this can get out of hand fast. It can. That's one of the reasons why hookup culture is toxic, is because you have people who are muddying the water too much with alcohol and not understanding the responsibilities that you have when it comes to that. So if you're concerned with, if somebody's concerned with, if you have doubts as to whether or not the person is sober enough to consent, you're probably right in doubting that this person is not sober enough to consent. Wait sometimes. Wait a few minutes. Wait an hour. If they sober up and they still want to do it, cool. Have fun. But if they're still drunk, and don't do it. Like, I had a passenger one time when I was driving Uber. It was one of my last passengers, I think, before the pandemic started, but before I stopped driving for about 3 years. The only reason I drove recently because I had a great incentive, which is rare these days. But this passenger was in the front seat, and she was talking about how much she wanted to get laid that night, but she was flipping drunk. And I was like, she's like, do you think that I could get laid tonight? And I was like, I would hope that nobody would. I'm sure you'd be able to find people, but at this point, how intoxicated you are, I'm thinking to myself, anybody who had sex with you right now would be raping you. I don't care how much you say that you want to get laid. No, it would not be a good thing for them to have sex with us. I mean, I could probably find you the audio of the video, because I think I downloaded it from the camera finally, and just play what she was saying. It was kind of, there was some vulgarity in there, but say, I love the story of the guy who said, "Hey, let's sober up if you still want to," but damn, that sounds like a fairy tale. And it wasn't a guy. It wasn't a guy that said it. It was a woman. They were both women. So I just left the gender out because it's not really relevant to the idea of what consent is. Again, it has nothing to do. Like, there was flat out, there was a time where I didn't feel comfortable with something that was going on, but I felt kind of forced with this older woman that I was seeing, because I was trapped in her house and I had no way back home, and there was no Uber and Lyft at the time. And, I don't regret it. I mean, I don't feel like I was harmed greatly by what happened. Um, but technically, it still falls under that category where she had the upper hand, she had the power. I had no ability to really say no. And I had to just power through it. And that's part of toxic masculinity, because toxic masculinity says, well, men don't say no to free sex. Toxic masculinity is like, well, you should just go ahead and do it because you're a man and that's what men do. And men aren't supposed to have body autonomy when it comes to that. Men are supposed to jump at the chance to have some sex. So, again, I still know the person to this day. We haven't talked in forever, but we did at some point later have consensual sex that was clearly consented to. But there were certain conditions that night that I didn't feel like dealing with, but I had to deal with anyway, simply because of the fact that, well, I wanted to ride home. So that's one of my stories, I guess. I don't know if I've ever told that one on the radio before, on the podcast, but at the end of the day, that person did not respect my body autonomy that day. That person did not make me feel as if I had the ability to say no and still get home. Simple as that. Eggoff Twiddler, real point. Why would you want to have sex with somebody who may regret it the next day and then look back on the event as being manipulated or abused by the event? As I said earlier, because they're sociopaths. There are a decent amount of sociopaths in this. They don't care about what other people think. All they care about, to use it's not a derogatory term, but to use a blunt, over-the-top term, they're just worried about getting their dick wet. That's all they care about. No more, no less. Doesn't matter to them if the people consent. All that matters to them is that they get off. They personally get off, not the other person gets off. They don't care if the other person gets off either. Doesn't matter to them. They're just all about running up the numbers and scoring lots of points in their body count, so to speak. And the idea of body count is ridiculous too, but Elizabeth, I was never casual about sex. Me neither. I always put on a bow tie. Sorry. Sorry that happened to you then. Glad it's not a really harmful experience. Yeah, I mean the experience that happened. That am I gonna go for broke here too? The buddy system period. All women should know this. Yeah. But they shouldn't have to. That's kind of the point. But you live in the world that exists, not in the world that you want to exist. In a perfect world, you wouldn't need a buddy system. In a perfect world, nobody would rape either. So, so we wouldn't have to worry about that. We clearly don't live in a perfect world. We live in a highly imperfect world, and so we have to deal with the world as is and not as the world as we want it to. While we push for us, while we push to get a world as close to one that we want to push to as we feel like it. And I don't want to derail this episode with a whole thing that's not really related. So the thing that I was thinking about just coming out and talking about, I might talk about on a future show. If you're friends with me on Facebook, you already know what this is about. It's a secret that I held for a very long time. But I'm not talking about it tonight. So I'm not comfortable talking about it tonight yet. This publicly. So just, there's other things. Let's just put it that way. Let's see. This all sounds so mature that any person wouldn't want their sexual partner to be as much into being physical as they are. Yeah, it is immature. Well, I don't even know if it's immature. I don't even know if immature is the right word for it, simply because of the fact that there are a lot of older people who are immature, sure, but I don't think maturity has anything to do with it. I think it's more just ethics and morality. There are people who don't care about others, and there are people that do. Like, in my personal experiences, like, I don't enjoy having sex unless I know that my partner is enjoying it too. I want my partner to get off enjoying it. I never wanted to have a one-night stand, because if I liked you enough to have sex with you, and if you liked me enough to have sex with me, I'm going to want to perform as good as possible and make you feel as good as possible, so you'd come back and want to see me again. And again and again and again. It's, that's how I think. But, some people don't think that way. Some people just want to be like Trump and run up on them and grab them like a bee and grab them by the pea and whatever. So, yeah. But back to the original point of this half hour, which has turned into an hour now, is that, I recommend everybody watch the Recall. Was it the Recall Reframed? Watch the Recall Reframed if you have the ability to do so. It's on Peacock. If you have Peacock, you might be able to find it on MSNBC over the weekend at some time. I'm sure they'll air it over this weekend because it just recently came out. And I want you to, sit back and think about it too and see, do they have a point? Is pushing for harsher sentences on rape cases detrimental to the case of eliminating mass incarceration? Can you have both? Can you have that cake and eat it too? I think you can. But I sat and thought about it a good bit. Because my life view never really had me consider the idea that by pushing for harsher sentencing for rape, you're potentially pushing to have mass incarceration be perpetuated. I didn't think that a recall effort could potentially cause other judges to want to give harsher sentences to protect their own careers. Now, I don't know how many judges actually did this. Maybe the judges over those next 6 weeks, there were a few. Maybe there were a few that skewed the average, but maybe there were other cases that weren't finished. Like, why did they pick 6 weeks? Why did they not pick 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks, 14 weeks, 24 months, whatever? However many months you want. Like, to me, sometimes you always have to question numbers, because when they're like, in the next 6 weeks, these things happen. Well, why did you pick 6 weeks? Why not 5? Why not 7? Because probably 6 makes their argument the best. It's the best way for them to make the argument that they're trying to make. But if we looked at it from a year out, did they go back to normal? I'm thinking that they probably did go back to normal, or somewhat close to there at least. Maybe they went a little up because maybe the person they replaced this judge with would be like, hey, people like Brock Turner should be sentenced more harshly, and that's the end of it. But it's an interesting thing to think about, and it's the kind of thing that when you're looking at politics and when you're looking at what people say, like the gut reaction from conservatives when they deal with woke, or they deal with, critical race theory, or all these other things that they don't understand. Their gut reaction is to lash out and be like, that's stupid, that's ridiculous, I don't agree with that at all, blah, blah, blah. They're all angry about it. But, if you take the time and you allow yourself to hear the other person's point of view, you don't have to agree. Like, again, I took the time, I sat down, I did some research, I marinated on the things that the people were saying. I understand what you're saying. I get your points. There may be some validity to what you're saying, but here's where I disagree. And then that's how you have better discussions at the end of the day too. Especially with people who you generally would agree with. Like, I'm sure that the people who made the documentary and myself and other people are all happy to have mass incarceration be reduced or eliminated in place of, non-mass incarceration. I don't know what eliminating mass incarceration doesn't mean eliminating incarceration. It just means we're not going to imprison everybody for everything. We're not going to perpetuate the prison industrial system. We're not going to just have a just loop back of people just going recidivism and going back to jail, going back to jail, going back to jail, et cetera, et cetera. So that's how you have those conversations. That's how you can better understand other people's point of view, is just by not going with your gut reaction when it comes to things that don't seem intuitive to you, and allowing yourself to just kind of take a breather and to try and understand it, and then re-engage in the conversation and be like, okay, I understand why you're saying what you're saying. It'll make your arguments better too, because you don't have to agree with them. But you can understand what they're saying, so you can actually argue with what's being said instead of arguing straw men. Like, I used to reject the idea of the term rape culture because in part I was defining it in my own head without really understanding what other people were saying and other people's definition. And like the first definition I saw, I think was pretty horrible anyway. It was a bad definition. But I eventually listened and changed my worldview because I understood what was being said with it now. A lot of times with conservatives, like discussing woke, discussing CRT, they don't know what those things really are. They're just told to be afraid of them, and then they just garble and get all angry. But if they were to take the time and actually understand what being woke meant, what CRT is, and the underlying concept behind it, maybe some of them might take the opportunity to realize, oh wait, I'm wrong. Most of them won't, because it's a cardinal sin to admit that you're wrong in the Republican Party as a conservative. So, oh wait, caller, yes, Elizabeth. Sorry, I was looking at the screen and not looking down at the other screen, so I didn't necessarily see the caller calling in. So, hey, what's going on? Yes, I can hear you. Yep. I can hear you. You broke up. You broke up a little bit, but it's fine. But I understand your point, and I agree with you. Ending for-profit prisons will do a lot to eliminate mass incarceration, because these for-profit prisons donate to judges, elected judges. They donate to politicians who appoint judges. There's a profit motive for them to continuously do that. Oh, hold on. Wait. They can't hear you. Hold on. Let me. No, I don't think it's you. I don't think it's you. I think it's hold on. Speakers. Say something now.
Okay, I'm here.
Yes, I think they can hear you now. All right, so start over.
Okay, well, the whole thing with the prisons for profit, when there's a profit motive to jail your neighbor, then there's big business. There's money to be had. And so, is that all right?
Yeah, we can definitely hear you.
Okay. So that to me, right off the bat, is if you follow the money, ultimately you're going to find that there's somebody making money. I mean, there's some, like, they're contracting out. They're subverting a lot of the federal and state funding that's funneled into state governments and through state governments to local programs, is being funneled into these programs that are being contracted out at the county level, at the city level, contracted out to private entities. And, these guys, and there's profit to be made. And some of these services need to be regulated. They can't be just contracted out to whoever. This includes elder care, foster care, who knows what.
Right.
So there's a lot of this going on. They're trying to privatize everything. They're trying to squeeze the dime out of every little vital need that we might have.
Yep. That's the problem. One of the problems I have with all the charter schools is that they're taking public money and giving them to all these little private charters, and it's paying more people than need to be paid, because every charter school has an administrator that's not needed. It's an inefficiency. So yeah,
precisely. And they don't have to be certified. They don't have to be certified, right. And the charter school cannot be regulated because they're not receiving the public money directly. It's subverting the system.
Right, and that's what they want to do. They're like, that's early on when Donald Trump was elected, and he was talking about turning Washington upside down. I was like, he's going to shake it like a couch and try and get all of the money out of it. That's what they try and do. They try and privatize every single thing.
Every vital need, every vital resource, food, fuel, medication, anything that we need
Yep.
They want to privatize so they can hang it over us and decide who lives and dies. And that's, it really is a death cult they used to threaten when Obamacare was going through.
Right. Obamacare had the death panel. I guess every conservative accusation often ends up being a confession. Yeah. They said Obamacare had death panels. Of course, what they called death panels was a limitation of cost sharing. It was ridiculous. I actually have I had an audio from way back in the day where I was telling somebody who was in Congress that I went to one of his town halls, and I was like, no, you're wrong. And the congressman was like, you're much, much smarter than I am. And so I played that on the air a lot when I had my terrestrial radio show. So yeah, so I enjoyed the fact that Congressman Gao, who was only one term, did say you were much, much smarter than I am, because I agree, at least on that thing, because I actually read the bill and he didn't. He just read a letter from the Liberty Council, and that's the thing, is all these propagandists out there that people don't question, because again, Donald Trump said he loves the poorly educated, and so A, he wants to keep people poorly educated, and B, he will take advantage of the fact that they are poorly educated by telling them things and convincing them that his lies are for truth, and then they doubt everybody else. So,
well, it's sort of undermining the institutions, and just like any kind of an attempt to undermine our currency,
right,
as the U.S. dollar. That's why I never have been really up for the pseudo currency. Sorry if I'm offending anybody who's into that, but I never was. And there's just a couple things, that I've been skeptical about engaging in, just because they had too many wide-ranging potential consequences, and they were hammered through Congress real fast.
Right.
And anyway, I'm going to let you go, because I'm in the middle of trying to make chicken and dumplings. So
okay, I want some. You have to make me some if I'm ever in your neck of the woods.
Yeah, well, it's been raining, so I'm trying to get something warm going. So
nice.
Anyway,
right.
Thanks for having me on.
Oh, you're very welcome. Have a good rest of your day. Thank you for calling. Now, I do have a question. I do have a question for the rest of the chat. Just for the rest of the chat. Did y'all hear this week's Hypocrite of the Week? Because apparently my audio settings might not have been correct. So I'm thinking that my Hypocrite of the Week did not play at least on the air. At least it didn't play. It played on the podcast. It didn't play on the. It might not have played audibly on the air. So let's go ahead, and we're going to go ahead and just play Hypocrite of the Week anyway again, since I know it's going to be playing now.
This week's Hypocrite of the Week is Steve Bannon, who is critical of the comments Florida Governor Ron DeSantis made over Trump's involvement with Stormy Daniels. Bannon failed to criticize Trump when he made his own sordid and homophobic allegations as well. If you demand decorum when others discuss Trump, you should demand decorum from Trump as well. Do we expect that to ever happen? Of course not. To see who next week's Hypocrite of the Week will be, tune in to Liberal Dan Radio. Talk from the left, that's right. Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Central on Liberal Dan Radio on YouTube and blogtalkradio.com/LiberalDan.
All right, that's this week's Hypocrite of the Week. If we did not hear, I don't know what happened. One of my settings that captures the desktop audio just went to default, and I don't know why the defaulted off of something else. I think it default went to like the monitor or something, so that's why we weren't hearing Elizabeth. But fortunately, we got it taken care of, and we got to hear that as well. But while we're at it, I'm kind of playing this. I already have next week's Words of Redneck Wisdom picked out, because it's the same dude that's this week's Words of Redneck Wisdom. But I just want you to hear, this guy, I think, makes Ficus sound like a brain surgeon. Like, this guy is, whew. I've heard him several times before. I finally went ahead and downloaded the show to make this week's Words of Redneck Wisdom.
And now, Words of Redneck Wisdom, brought to you by Liberal Dan Radio.
I've been watching, the news last couple of days, and I see Doug Mastriano, grilling the guy from the railroad there, but the derailment, the thing about who signed off on burn, and he keeps saying that it's the fire chief there. Well, Jeff, I'm confused. I'm really confused. Wouldn't the EPA take charge of that situation if they was there 2 hours after the... I mean, Doug Mastriano, as much as I like him, he sits there and says he knows about stuff like this. He's been in the internal works on stuff like this. Then why is he pretending to believe? I mean, not pretending to not believe the guy, but pretending that. I mean, I never heard the EPA mentioned in the clips I saw. Why is he asking about who signed off when they know the EPA was in charge? They would have had to sign off the EPA, right? Correct? Am I just a dumbass? He says, I don't buy it. He says, I don't buy it that the fire chief... Well, of course he don't buy it. That's absurd. The lowest guy on the totem pole, he's pretending. He knows damn good well the EPA was in charge and had the authority there. Or am I just a dumbass, Jeff? Why was he wasting money on asking a dumb question and get the dumb answer? I don't understand it. That's all they do is pretend. And I'm getting mad. I'm angry because I know I'm not that stupid.
And this concludes Words of Redneck Wisdom, brought to you by Liberal Dan Radio. Talk from the left, that's right.
So there you go. This week's Words of Redneck Wisdom, Jeff. Am I a dumbass? Well, I think you might be, I reckon. Yeah. There's an even better one for next week, but I wanted to introduce you to, because I've had the cowboy guy, Leon from South Carolina. I think this guy's either from Ohio or Indiana or something, but yeah, I wanted to give an introduction to this one before going way off the deep end with what he said, I think, on another day. So that's one of my bits that I'd like to do. Try and do it every day. Words of Redneck Wisdom. Every podcast, at least every Wednesday. Also with Hypocrite of the Week. Jeff Curry, I'm fluent in redneck and hillbilly. Is there? I guess there might be a difference. Depends how many times you say I reckon. So I don't sure hope it's not a firearm reference. What, the educator can part hair at 1,000 feet? I don't think that was supposed to be taken as an actual legitimate firearm reference. So that's not an Indiana accent. Sounds Appalachian. Yeah, I cut off the announcement of where he's from, so I'll have to remember. I'll have to go back and listen, and I'll update next week. But yeah, am I a dumbass? Oh, yes, you are. You are. So are a lot of the people that call into that radio station, because, oh boy, yeah, interesting people, all of them. But anyway, so kind of to wrap up the whole show, first we talked about, just to give us a small recap, we talked about the recall in New Orleans, how the people failed to recall, and I was correct why the recall would be not successful, simply because of the fact that my ballot was marked wrong, and when they pre-printed their stuff, so I couldn't imagine that other ones would be marked wrong or wouldn't be marked wrong either. So they failed miserably. All they did reveal is the inherent racism in the system, because there's a lot of things that this mayor was criticized of that other mayors had not been, and the difference between it is that she's a black woman and they're not. So there's that, and then of course there's the documentary, the reframing of the recall in California, of the judge that had made the ruling over the decision to only give Brock Turner 6 months. We had that discussion talking about, is pushing for longer prison sentences for rape a way to, is that counteract any attempts to stop mass incarceration? I think it's too black and white to say, you either go for complete ending of mass incarceration and no, you can't have any prison sentences that are made harsher. I think that's incorrect. I think you can have a push for like murder and rape. I think those things, child abuse, I think those things can still have harsh sentences while eliminating the mass incarceration for those other things, and you'll end mass incarceration at that point. So that's what it is. That's what it be. So just a reminder, I will be on Twitch tomorrow night, twitch.tv/nerdydan.com. If you would like to join us there. Again, I'll probably be doing some Dreamlight Valley to make Aaron happy. I also have some tasks to do in Dreamlight Valley to finish up. And I'll also be doing, Fortnite as well. But, if everybody comes in and we just start talking about politics and everything, if Trump gets it... Look, if Trump gets indicted tomorrow and actually gets indicted tomorrow, we'll probably have a lot to talk about. So if you want to join me to talk about that, come to my Twitch stream tomorrow and we'll talk about it. Now, one of the things I did want to talk about earlier on is the fact that I forgot to mention is the fact that initially it was reported today that he wouldn't be arrested, but that Trump would turn himself in willingly if indicted. And at first I had a hard time believing that, simply because of the fact that why would Donald Trump just willingly do that? But then I realized how much Donald Trump followed in the footsteps of Adolf Hitler when it came to all of the other things that he did, like, scapegoating an entire religion for the problems when he promoted the idea of having a total and complete Muslim ban, a ban of Muslims entering the country. He what was the other thing? He used the Lügenpresse, the lying. Adolf Hitler used to talk about the Lügenpresse, the lying press. Donald Trump was kept on talking about fake news. Donald Trump followed Hitler's playbook pretty well. So part of Hitler's playbook would have to be going to prison for a bit, because that's what Adolf Hitler did. That's where he wrote Mein Kampf, I think, was in prison. So Darth Marmalade, that's awesome. I like calling him Orange Foulius, but I think I might have to steal Darth Marmalade. That's hilarious. So yeah, the fact that he's willing to turn himself in might just say that, hey, I'm going to go ahead and be a martyr in prison. And he could even run for president from prison. He could do that if he wanted to. Like, that would be an interesting thing, to have somebody elected from jail to be president, elected from prison to be president. That would be a strange thing. It would be show that our country had really gone off the rails. Why is Blazing Saddles trending? That's interesting. It's loading slowly. I don't know why Blazing Saddles is whatever. Elizabeth, I don't tote guns, I promise. I'm disarming and into de-escalation. Words mightier than a sword. The pen is mightier than the sword, or as fake Sean Connery say, the penis mightier. I'll take the penis mightier, Trebek. Anyway, something went wrong. Don't fret, it's not your fault. Okay. Well, why is Don the Con trending? I'm not getting anything. I don't know. It's really weird. See, oh, that's such a sweet image, but we all know that Creepsicle's not going to prison in any traditional sense of the phrase. My thought was that if he actually believed that he was going to go and be in prison, if he thought he was going to be found guilty, my thought was that he would just flee the country, that he would go to some place that doesn't have extradition, and that would be the end of it. And that would be how we got rid of him, because he wouldn't want to have to deal with impending imprisonment. The other side of the coin is that if he does that, then he has to admit that he would lose, and he has a hard time admitting that he would lose. His ego may very well put him in prison, because in order for him to run away, he have to admit that he was going to lose, and he can never do that. Or he would find some way to spin it at least, but it would be a difficult spin, and he would never be able to get to be president again at that point. So Let's see. I've been trying to find that until I got reminded of the Donald Trump point I wanted to make today. There we go. So he found guilty, yeah, but if he's convicted, it is going to be some kind of ankle bracelet situation. No way we're imprisoning a former U.S. president. I think we could. I think we absolutely could. I think he might go to a supermax or something, depending on the crime. I mean, yeah, I would love him to leave the country. I mean, I don't know does he go to Russia if he flees the country? If he goes to Russia, I mean, there's nothing more for him to give Putin. So Putin would have no reason to keep him safe. So I don't think he goes to Russia. I think he goes somewhere else. But maybe he could take all the deplorables with him. That would be awesome. He could just, do a mass exodus like the Israelis fleeing slavery in Egypt for the promised land. They could go all leave the United States following their Donald Trump like a bunch of lemmings and head somewhere else where they can name him emperor for life, call their new country Dumbfuckistan, and they can build whatever wall they want to, even though they don't have to, because no one will want to go into Dumbfuckistan to begin with. So bless your heart, Dan. I mean, I don't know. It's really difficult to understand and figure out what's going to happen, because you have to bounce Donald Trump's ego off of Donald Trump's wanting to be free, and you have to and willingness to circumvent and violate the law, and then you have to have a little bit of trust, I guess, in the judicial system. I don't know. I don't know what will happen. It'll be an interesting thing, but I hope tomorrow we finally see at least one, or if not more, indictments. Jeff Curry, I do not want to see a perp walk. I want to see a Assange-style carry out. I don't like perp walks, but since perp walks are a thing, I really want him to be perp walked. But he's not going to be perp walked because he's rich and can afford wealthy attorney. He can afford his rich people attorneys who will negotiate him coming peacefully if he is going to come peacefully, and as such they'll allow him to whatever. Ooh, I hit the button already. Anyway, so this is the end of this week's episode of Liberal Dan Radio, Talk from the Left. That's right. I'll be again, especially if Donald Trump is indicted tomorrow, come to my Twitch stream, twitch.tv/nerdydan.com, 8 p.m. Central over there as well, and we'll talk about that whilst I'm being a nerd and playing video games. Otherwise, next Wednesday, 8 p.m. Central, blogtalkradio.com/liberaldan. Support the Patreon, subscribe to the channel, share videos, help me get to 1,000 viewers, 1,000 subs so I can get monetized and all that good stuff. Until next week, this is Dan Zimmer with Liberal Dan Radio. Talk from the left. That's right.